Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast. And I've got a guy with me here. Not only is Ryan an amazing baseball dad, right? Spent this weekend, what was it, 14, made 14 out of 16 of three kids' games in a tournament, like out of town. The guy's a beast. But you'll probably know Ryan more likely from Franchise Fastlane, being a co-founder there. He's co-founded a couple of other things, and now he's kicking off Franchise Sidekick. And it's going very well, thriving. You've been at this for about a year now, right? With Sidekick, Ryan?
Yeah, it's been officially Sidekick for just under 13 months. Yep.
Yeah, I remember it was almost this time last year. So, guys, we're going to talk about a couple of killer things. Ryan's an expert in so many areas, but Ryan, tell us a little bit more about you, about yourself, and about Sidekick before we jump in, so people get to know you better.
Yeah, you got dad of four from Omaha, Nebraska, and totally by accident fell into franchising. Didn't know a thing about entrepreneurship when I came out of college. Didn't know how to spell it. But like all things, I got surrounded by the right people. I was fortunate to get my first job was at a GNC, working for a franchisee that was super entrepreneurial. He was he owned the top 5 producing GNCs in the country. We were buying underperforming stores, and I got to learn from him every single day, see his lifestyle, understand his ways. I loved my job, and because I got to see what he did every day, decided to leave and become a franchisee. So bought a multi-unit opportunity with Anytime Fitness. Still my favorite time of all of my entrepreneurial journeys is in the winter, the first year that I bought these Anytime Fitnesses. I'm sitting in a cold construction trailer that didn't have heat, didn't have electricity, and I'm selling pre-memberships, and I loved every single minute of it because it was finally for me, right? It was my opportunity. Love that, and just kept going with franchising. So now I've been in franchising a little over 20 years. I've been a franchisee around 25 times. I've been a franchisor of a nutrition company that we grew to 200 locations and we sold it. Co-founded Franchise Fastlane, which is the largest franchise sales organization in the country. And about a year ago, a little over a year ago, founded Franchise Sidekick, which works on the opposite side of the equation. Fastlane worked with the next big thing, franchisors, representing the few brands that met the criteria that we felt were going to be the next big thing in the market. And then when we went through that exit, I moved over to the client side, and now I'm helping people find the right franchise opportunity for them.
Wow. Yeah, and that journey, I mean, Fastlane is a thriving company. So what were some of the things that led you, just a curiosity question, what led you to want to go do your thing and start Sidekick and do it a little bit differently?
Oh man, Dave, it was one of the hardest decisions of my life. It wasn't just thrive. I mean, it wasn't just grown. It was thriving. I mean, Fastlane met all of my criteria, right? We were helping people become entrepreneurs. We were making good money. I was not running the day-to-day. Carrie, the co-founder, was running the day-to-day. So I had no pain. And at first I had an allergic reaction to the idea of, going through a process like that. But like all things, when you sit down and you really contemplate it for a while, you think about what you want into your future. So real quick on how it worked, I met a gentleman from Boxwood Capital, and Boxwood had helped several of our franchisors that we helped grow through an exit process. So I sat down with him, his name is Patrick, and I said, hey, I want to understand what are the things that these buyers are looking for in the franchisors, because I want to help our clients better understand how to get there. So we got to talk, and we created a little bit of a friendship. And like all good investment bankers do, he said, hey, can I take a peek, at Fastlane? He said, at the very end of it, the worst case scenario is you get a free valuation. I said, sure. Okay. So, we sent him over some information. A few days later, he comes back and he says, I think that, Fastlane could look like this through an exit process. And at first I said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Like I said, it's something that I truly love. I thought I was going to do it forever. Yeah. But you get to thinking about it for a while. And there's some times that you just, cross a road and you say, do you ever say no to something like that? Right. We had just gone through COVID. It was a life-changing opportunity. And so I went back to him and I said, there's only one way that I would consider doing this. We had this little 2-person team inside of Fastlane called My Fastlane Track. And the purpose of that was marketing directly to the clients to help them come in and then to look at all of our brands, right? Primarily our leads were coming from various broker groups. And so we really didn't put much time or attention into that. It was just sort of a side project that we had thought about. I said, if I can buy out that little 2-person team and I can still help people become entrepreneurs, but on the client side now, then I would go ahead and move forward with the Fastlane exit process. And it took a while for them to get comfortable with it, but ultimately, the decision was made. Yeah, I think we could do that. So we went through the process. We partnered with a fantastic group called Southfield, private equity group. They are just phenomenal people. And then I went and started spending all of my time on that little 2-person team. And we eventually moved it over to Franchise Sidekick, or the name was Franchise Sidekick. And real quick on that, the reason we did it was a book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a great book. And it walks through a process of why the company is not the hero. The company is the guide, right? It says every movie, every experience that you want to go through, you have a hero who has a problem, who meets a trusted guide that walks them through a proven process to get them to a desired outcome that they can then celebrate together. Mm-hmm. And me and Tyler, the co-founder of Sidekick, we're thinking about that process. And we say, well, who's got the back of the hero? If we're not the hero, we're the guide. Who's got the back of the hero? And we both were like, a sidekick, right? Franchise Sidekick. So Franchise Sidekick was born. And the whole idea is that we want to have that proven process. We want to be that trusted guide to help the hero, the person who wants to move into entrepreneurship through franchising. And we want to have the best possible process for them to do it.
Yeah, I love that. That Donald Miller, right? Isn't that who wrote that book? It's a killer process of branding, but also, making sure. Yeah, there's a nice endorsement. You're welcome, Mr. Miller. But it's the right way to think about marketing strategy, and also I think it puts you in the right frame of mind as a business owner. That my role, even where I'm at, it's not to. Well, we're not the hero. Like, we're making our clients the heroes in a major way. Like, that's what it should be about. If you approach the market with that mindset, you'll find there's a lot of room to thrive, and not a lot of scarcity. So anyway, that's not the purpose of this, but thanks for sharing that, man. That's what a cool journey. And yeah, Patrick's a good man at Boxwood. Certainly knows what's going on in the marketplace. So well, let's shift. So because of your background, I thought it would be appropriate for us to focus today on, like, how can franchisors shift their mindset as they're building out their models, their franchise development processes, pretty much everything, and put themselves in the shoes of the candidate. And you're kind of an expert in the space, man. So I want to pick your brain. Let's talk just for a few minutes about, if we put ourselves in, well, first of all, you'd mentioned to me before about, like, franchisors really understanding what stage they're in as far as like in their journey of franchise development. If you want to break that topic up a little bit, maybe we can help some of the folks listening, like, figure out, like, well, where do I fit in this continuum?
100%. Yeah, there's a lot to consider as a franchisor, and we speak to many franchisors, and they're excited to sell, right? I've been a fantastic dry cleaner, I've been a fantastic ice cream shop, fitness center, whatever, and they're just so excited to sell. But they come in, and for a lack of a better term, it's a little unorganized or unplanned, right? You really need to think about where you are in the marketplace and what's ideal for you, right? There's almost 4,000 franchisors out there. And so how do you differentiate? How are you going to stand out? Why would somebody invest their life savings and agree to sign a document that's probably heavily swayed in your favor, and spend a significant amount of their time over the next 10 years in your brand? Don't underestimate the commitment that this person is making. And trust me, I know this. Between Fastlane and Sidekick, we do about 2,000 franchise units a year, right? We have to really get into the psychology of this. I often say we're not a sales company, we're not a marketing company, we are a psychology company, right? Because there's a tremendous amount of emotion that happens through that process when you're making a big decision like this. So for a franchisor, first, are you ready to truly bring on franchisees? Why, right? Have you done it before? What are your existing franchisees saying? Are they buying more? Are they encouraging their friends and family to get in? If you're not yet at that stage, consider, should I be spending more to bring on more franchisees, or should I be spending more to invest into the company and make sure that they're growing? The other category of that is, what type of franchisee do you need? Do you need an A+ player? We all want them. Every single franchisor I've ever met said, here's my ideal candidate. I want A+ players. But I say, if you need A+ players, you're not ready to franchise yet, right? Franchising is a concept where they should be able to, a franchisor should be able to succeed with C+, B- players. Those folks should still be able to have a successful business, make a profit in your franchise. If they can't, then I would say you're not truly ready to franchise to the masses. Maybe you have a small specific type of person that you could go and target, and that's fine. But if you're looking to really kind of open it up to more people, you need to make sure that you can be successful with that B- franchisee. The other is what? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask you to dive a little bit more into that, but finish the list, because you had a couple of things. We'll jump back into that in a second. Please go ahead.
You got it. The other is, think about the process that you are taking people through. So why is Franchise Fastlane so successful? It's because, one, they choose only next big thing brands. That's a huge part of it. But two, they run a tremendous process, right? I mean, somebody that's considering this, they come in and they see professional recordings, automations through CRMs. introduction presentations, unit economic presentations, validation that is organized and ready to go, encouraging franchisees to really dive deep with clients to tell them what the experience is. They get on the phone with the leadership. I mean, every stage of it is organized. It is professionally done. The animations and the illustrations, they all look great because they're done by professionals. And many, many times I see these fantastic franchise concepts, but they put very little effort into that process. And then all of a sudden they wonder why franchisees aren't attracted to them. Well, that's the first impression, right? If you go up against a Franchise Fastlane brand, for instance, and they're going to go through that very proven and professional process, and yours is more like, hey, let's have a conversation. I'll write some things on the back of the napkin, and then we'll see if you're interested once you talk to our franchisees. It's just not going to work. So put the same level of effort that you would to your customers that you do into the process with those franchise clients or candidates.
Yeah, man. Well, I think you just dropped a lot on us. We're gonna go back through and kind of rehash a couple of these topics, but let's go back to this comment you made about readiness to support their candidates, because this is something that I see a lot of folks struggling with right now. So when you say, hey, you got to make sure that you've got the infrastructure set up to support your new franchise owners, give me an example of what that doesn't look like right now.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like I need to sell because I need the franchise fee. Huge mistake, right? And us, those of us that have been in the franchising world, we see it happen often. People say, "Man, what a rock and a hard place. I need to sell franchises in order to create the working capital I need to build the infrastructure." And it's a little bit of the reverse, right? I would say spend more time on the front end, have a great proof of concept, and then do what you need to secure the capital to be sure you can be selective in the franchisee process, right? If you cannot be selective in the franchisee process, I promise you eventually that's going to come back and bite you. Yeah, so get ahead of that, number one.
Yeah, agreed. Well, it's crazy. So I have met folks that have had somebody help them franchise, and we won't even go down that road because I think that's kind of the shady space in the industry that needs to be cleaned up. But and they don't have a concept that's unique, and they don't have a concept. They don't have enough cash flow from their own location. Like I've literally heard people say, well, we needed to franchise because we needed to generate more revenue. And I was like red flag. If you aren't making enough money it's like from your corporate location or locations, how on earth do you expect an entrepreneur to come in, follow your model, and then make enough money to thrive or even survive? Like, I'm sure you've seen the same thing because you guys reviewed hundreds and hundreds of concepts to figure out who do you want to rep at Fastlane, but and at Sidekick too. But I mean, how often do you run into something like that? And what advice do you have for somebody who's thinking about franchising but maybe isn't quite there yet?
Yeah, it's well, the advice is always go slow so someday you can go fast, right? There's too many people that hear about franchising and hear that it's easy. You put your FDD together, you talk to a few people, all of a sudden you're going to make a big franchise fee and you'll be able to use that as working capital. If anybody tells you that, run away. They don't have your best interest in mind, right? But you're right, both at Sidekick and Fastlane, one of the core principles of what we do is we say no to more than we say yes. Yeah. I'll start with Fastlane and I'll move to Sidekick, right? Fastlane says yes to maybe 5% of the brands that reach out to them, right? 200 brands a year plus will apply with Fastlane for them to represent them. And they'll usually say yes to 10 or fewer, right? Because number one, most important thing, people need to trust they will only represent next big thing brands. Mm-hmm. As soon as that trust is gone, as soon as people feel like, oh, that was a compromise, they shouldn't have brought that brand in, then that starts to diminish, right? You need to feel like when I'm speaking to them, they're telling me about Jimmy John's before everybody else in my community knows about it. And that was a core principle that we moved over to Sidekick as well, right? We have 3 levels of inventory at Sidekick. So the base level is standard. There's plenty of franchisors that could get into standard. Standard is we want you to have at least 5 franchise units. We want you to have an item 19. We want you to have an open process and validation, a desire to develop the majority of the country, and a proven sales process. That's all you need to do to get into standard, right? However, we want to move you up to accelerated and certified. So accelerated, those are brands that we believe have characteristics to be the next big thing, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're small, but we see something in them. I'll use an example of a brand that we previously worked with, Smash My Trash. When we first started representing Smash My Trash, they were less than 5 units. 3 years later, they were 600 units. Now, why? Why were they able to do that? Because they had a unique selling proposition that they could go tell business owners that if you use our services, we're going to save you money and it's going to require no effort, right? When you see that and you understand franchising, okay, let's tell our clients, we believe this one's going to grow quickly. However, you need to know they're not going to have 10 years of franchise support behind them. They're not going to have robust technology like that brand that's been around for a seriously long time. But what you get is an opportunity to get in early, influence with the franchisor, and lots of open territory if you want to expand. If you don't want that, that's perfectly fine. I understand it. We're then going to show you certified brands, right? Brands, Express Employment, Right at Home, brands like these that have been around for a very long time, have hundreds of franchisees, have tremendous validation, have lots of technology and history behind it, because then that franchisee can come in and say, wow, I get to go leverage all of this experience. Experience is important when you're a franchisor. I get to go leverage all of this experience. The downside, you're not going to have as much influence and you're not going to have as much territory that you can go develop, right? So every person that we take through a process, we try to identify 6 core things that are important to them. And from those things, we then decide, or they decide, and we guide them to what are the right franchise brands for them.
Yeah. And I think that's the right way to approach it, because depending upon the individual, you have to have a couple of options. So thanks for sharing that. What now let's go back to another thing you said, if you don't mind, Ryan. You mentioned that franchisors that need A+ players to be successful are not ready for franchising. One, totally agree with that statement. And I wondered if you could maybe expound a little bit upon that and share, like, well, why is that? And what does that mean they need to be doing so they don't have to be dependent upon A+ players to be successful?
Yeah, when I say A+, it usually comes down to a couple of things. One, they're either fantastic at, let's say, a skill like sales, right? Or a skill like recruiting great people. Or they're just willing to put in so much time and they have enough grit that they're going to make it work. But not everybody falls into those buckets, right? Actually, the majority of people aren't going to have that superior skill that's going to allow them to be successful. And many times, franchisors, their first few franchisees are people that they know, people they like and trust. They say, hey, you would be great to go open my first one. So they take this absolute rock star and they put him in there. And that person goes and leverages whatever that superior skill is that they have to be successful. Now they go out there and they celebrate this big win from their first few franchise locations. And they say, you can do it too. But the core variable that they don't share is that person had a tremendous amount of grit, or they had a huge network of people that they could leverage to go create success, or they had been in sales for 25+ years and they were always a top performer and they applied those same things, right? So do not use that as your baseline or your validation. What you need to do is you need to go find that person that says, man, I don't know if I have the skills to make this successful. I want to go in and leverage your process, your experience to see if I can do it. And I don't exactly know how you validate who has the superior skills versus who doesn't. You got to just kind of use your opinion on that. Yeah. But when you see the person that came in and said, tell me more, let me absorb more of your system, and they do it exactly the way that you tell them to do it, and they then go have success, repeat that, leverage that, make sure you're comfortable with that. And then you can go out and take it into the broker world or start to advertise organically for franchisees. Then you should be very confident in the business model you've created as a franchisor, and your enterprise value will grow significantly because your system is what makes you successful, not the superior skill of an individual.
Yeah, I mean, forgive it, but it's the McDonald's principle, right? That I just should create a process that's so well defined and has enough tech to support that I could put anybody, almost a 15-year-old kid at the fryer, even though it's illegal, right? But 15-year-old kid at the fryer, and he'll be able to make perfect French fries every time. That's how I see franchising. And some of these folks, they've got weak operations manuals, weak training, weak systems, weak tech. Boy, don't get me started on tech. That's what I live in all day long. But like homegrown stuff, like Outlook integrations, that is the core of their CRM. I'm like, holy mackerel, this is like 2005 called and wants his tech back. But if these systems aren't in place, if the process isn't what produces results, I agree with you 100%. When you said, I was like, yes, sir. Like, that's exactly the challenge. And you need to be honest with yourselves too. Like, your first franchise location was your brother-in-law, and he's crushing it because he got 10 hours of support from you for the last 4 years to make it work. And you're the all-star making it work. Like, that's not a successful franchise. You got to go back and reevaluate tools and processes to make sure that you can put anybody in that's got the capital and the know-how and is competent, and then they can produce very, very similar results.
One of my favorite, another book that I really like is Good to Great by Jim Collins. And in that book, he talks about face the brutal facts, right? So many people, it's hard. And I understand it. I've spoken to so many franchisors that they love their business. They have sweat and bled over their business, and they so badly want it to grow. but they don't face the brutal facts. They look at the scenario with blinders on and say, well, here's my one version of success. I think, let's go give it a shot and see if we can repeat it. You got to face those brutal facts. To your example, if it's a brother-in-law that you've been given extra support for and you can't repeat that, you're not ready. Face those brutal facts. Go slow in order to go fast later. And I promise it will pay off. You just have to be patient. This is a long game. Franchising is not, even though you hear all these success stories like the one I just shared about Smash My Trash and you get infatuated with that's the exception, not the rule. You need to fall in love with the game of business, the franchising process, and be in it for the long haul. And then you can create significant enterprise value for yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, let's go to a couple of baseball metaphors. How many Acuñas are there? Right?
How many?
How many?
One.
I mean, if we're talking about in the Major League Baseball world, which is the best of the best, how many Acuñas? How many Otanis? How many Harpers? How many Trouts? How many Judges? Well, there aren't that many. I just listed them all. That's all of them, right? And in the world. Right. And so they're also like brands that are like Smash My Trash, right? They just explode, and rightfully so, right? Good concept, well executed, good processes, right tech, and they go. But not everybody's that, and you're probably not that if you're listening to this, and that's okay. It's all right. But well, that was one thing. The next here's another baseball one. But we used to always talk to our infielders about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And in franchising, it's the exact same. You have to go slow at first to make sure your processes are smooth, make sure it's frictionless, make sure that everything's defined well enough that it's a smooth engagement when you roll out a new franchise and they can smoothly move into revenue and profitability. And then you go fast. But if you try it any other way, it doesn't work. And you start throwing balls, you start screwing up plays, and you start struggling as a franchise. You'll grow to 20 units and then you shrink to 5. And then your item 19 is screwed up for the next 3 years. And so you got to put these things into perspective and recognize you don't want to become the next, actually, I won't say that brand, but you don't want to become the next brand that everyone references as a bad example of how to grow.
100%. Yeah. That's a funny baseball analogy you had. My old coach used to say, be quick, but don't hurry. Right. So there's all kinds of cool sayings around the idea of just take your time, do it right, and it'll pay off in the end.
Yeah. 100% agree. All right. So you mentioned last bullet from what you shared, Ryan, is how these folks have to be set up in the right way to attract A players. What are some of the specific things you're seeing the best brands are doing that you're doing with Sidekick to make sure you're attracted? Because even though you don't want to have to, boy, the more A players you can attract and draw into a brand, the better it's going to thrive. So even though it shouldn't be a necessity, how do you as a franchisor attract these A players?
Yeah. All right. We're talking baseball, so I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to use a youth baseball analogy. So we got this youth baseball team here in town that is really, really good. They've been good for a long time and they keep getting better. Now, why do they keep getting better? Because the best players from the other teams keep calling them and saying, do you have an open spot? Right. And the same is true in franchising, right? You have to be an example, a shining star, a next big thing as a franchisor if you truly want to attract others in this big world of 4,000 franchisors. So I believe the two most important things in franchise sales is validation. Your existing franchisees, how do they feel? Would they do it again? Are they recommending it to friends or family member? How long did it take for them to make money? How much time are they putting into the business? Things like that. And second is, a verifiable and trustworthy item 19. 1 or 2 units is not that, right? When we look at a whole of the franchise concept, you got 100 units. What percentage of those franchise units that have been open over a year are represented in that item 19? Can we build trust into something like that? Right. So if you can prove that over the majority of the franchise locations, they're making money and your franchisees are happy and growing, you don't need much else, right? Because everything else is the product or up channel that then creates those things, your unique selling proposition, your technology, your experience, your leadership team, your products, whatever it is, those things all combine to then move down channel into my item 19 and are my franchisees happy, right? Yeah. I can't talk specifics because every brand has to identify what that is for themselves. And then I just want to say one other thing on that.
Please.
Too many times franchisors say, look at this single unit or look at this territory that you can buy and that can create X. The reality of franchising, most of the time, some people are keeping a job and then they want to make just income on the side and they're happy with that forever. But I believe most people want to eventually transition into the idea of my business is my primary income. And then eventually I want to get my most important commodity back, which is my time, right? Nobody wants to continue to work like crazy for the rest of their life. And I've experienced that. I've gone through different emotional and characteristics that are important to my time through each business that I've been in. So if you're a franchisor, do you have a program that can take them from, let's say they're an employee and they want to own yours on the side? Okay, great. Is there stage 2 where they can transition full-time into that business and make enough income to support their lifestyle? And then is there eventually what we call the ability to live life on your own terms through multiple units, or the ability to develop a team to work that for them, or whatever that looks like? But you need to have a clear path for somebody to eventually live life on their own terms through franchise ownership with your brand. Otherwise, they're going to start looking at the other great baseball team down the block, because they need to have that path into that compelling future. If there's not a clear path into a compelling future, your brand's not going to be for them forever.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I had a session a little while ago, an interview with John Austinson, and he was talking about the investor model, the kind of submerging concept of, can you make your brand so operationally smooth that you can operate it from the corporate HQ, and you got doctors and attorneys and people with a lot of cash who are trying to get it out of the volatile markets and buy a franchise unit, let you operate it, and then you as the franchisor take twice as much royalty essentially as normal, which increases your value and tremendously in this world of exits. Or do you have the ability to groom people from, hey, you're starting out, you're getting this thing going now, like you said, there's enough cash flow, you can just do this full time and forget anything else you did before. And then can I build it into a multi-territory business model where I can now become semi-absentee with a general manager, make plenty of money, and then have an extra 30 hours of my week back? Like that, that's a reality most people are looking for. And look at the next generation. The next generation is a good indication of what we should be targeting now, I think, in the industry, because what do they value more than anything? Time. They're living in vans, right? They're living in tiny homes. They're living in mom and dad's basement, a lot of them still, because they don't care about the big house, and they do like cars, but they're not spending all the money on that stuff. They're spending it on experiences and things that will free up their time. I mean, try to hire a millennial or a Gen Zer right now, and one of the first things they ask is, how flexible can my schedule be?
Yeah. And I'd encourage franchisors that are listening to this, do you have a clear picture for your franchisees on how they grow to that next stage, how they grow to living life on their terms, or empire builder, or whatever you want to call it? Because many times you sell the unit, you say, let's figure out how to make this one successful. But give them a path on what does it look like once number one is successful, because the most valuable thing that you can do is continue to leverage your successful franchisees. Let them continue to grow within your system, as opposed to always bringing in new people and trying to figure it out from the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And some of these things, I think when you're an emerging brand, you haven't thought all this stuff through. Like, you might be thinking about this and saying, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to get my third unit right now, Dave and Ryan, come on. But the reality is you got to take a step back and figure this out now, especially because if you want to attract, you don't have to, but if you want to attract A players, a lot of them are the people that are expecting there to be a plan. And also, you mentioned before, like, know why you're different. I want to come back to that. Like, how do you differentiate in this busy market with thousands of brands? Well, if you're the one that, even if you're small and mighty, you have a good validation, right? Good item 19. And then you've also got a plan to say, hey, look, this is how we do it. You buy this, and then we help you with this. And then you get a second territory, and then you have enough cash flow to get a general manager. And now you're working 25 hours a week if you want to, and you're making this, you can't make claims on usually on income, but you can paint a good picture there, right? That shows them how do you get from owning to just running to now multi-unit and cashing out while golfing more, or spending time with grandbabies, or whatever that real want is. I think you're spot on, and you can build that plan without a single unit sold yet.
Yep, totally agree. It brings a concept to mind that I'm a big believer in. So you brought up differentiation. So let's just talk a little bit about that. And every franchise brand can differentiate in various ways. So I can't speak to a specific, but here's the thing that I believe in. I always believe that I want to be a rifle over a shotgun. And here's how it applies to franchisors. And I'm going to illustrate this. So imagine that we're out on a shooting range and there's 6 of us, and the rest of us are shooting with shotguns, and we're all hitting the target, and we're spraying these targets, and you're shooting with a rifle, and you're hitting bullseye every single time. And then we pull all the targets back, and the audience back there says, they don't care about all the people that are spraying it with shotguns. They want to look at you that hit the bullseye over and over again. That's what I believe differentiates all the businesses I've been in, and what I think franchisors should look at. Can you name the one thing that is most important to you? The one thing that you can be the best in the world at? Again, another Jim Collins scenario. This isn't figurative. This is literal. What is there's no lack of home painting franchises. There's no lack of home cleaning franchises, but what's that thing that you do better? If you can't illustrate it, then you're not going to attract anybody, because you're in that Red Sea. Nobody's really paying attention to you. There's 9 others that look just like you. The only reason I would buy you is if you're giving me a coupon or a discount, or you're giving me something special. Besides that, then I don't even want to look at you. I want to go look at that brand that says, here's the one thing that we do better than everybody else, and we're going to continue to focus on it. And in fact, it's why companies like Fastlane and companies like Sidekick can thrive, because franchisors that understand their one thing know they need to put 100% of their time and attention into that thing that makes them different, and outsource the rest. Right? Go use experts to do everything else. Fastlane was the best in the world at growing next big thing brands. Sidekick's the best in the world at helping people reduce their risk when buying a franchise. So go be a franchisor that knows that one thing that you're the absolute best in the world at.
Yeah, amen. And let's dive into that, because a lot of people listening are like, well, that's nice, but how do I know? Well, one, I hope there's something unique about what you do, and I won't share any trade secrets. But you mentioned painting franchises. I personally work with, I think, 7 or 8 painting franchises. They're great clients of mine, good folks. They got good business models. It's a great business model. My wife and I were looking at it, but our founder founded one, actually 2 technically. So I've decided I'm not going to go play ball in that space. But they make good money. It's a solid business model, but it's hard to differentiate in a sea of, well, we paint too. So I know a few that have done a great job saying, no, we only do this, and we do it better than everybody else, and they're doing well by even in a very crowded space, carving out a niche that isn't as common as everybody else, and proving that they can do it over and over again.
Yeah, let's use real world examples that people have seen over the last 15 years. I mentioned Jimmy John's earlier. Why did Jimmy John's? It's a sandwich shop. There is a million sandwich shops. Why did Jimmy John's grow? Freaky fast, right? People, and I do it all the time. I'm busy at work. I don't have time to run out. I can order Jimmy John's online, and they're at my door in under 15 minutes. Right? I love that about them. What about Planet Fitness, right? They came into this world of big box gyms that were starting to dwindle because of the prices. And they said, you know what? They understand there's attrition in that business model. And so they're going to sell memberships for $10 all day long. And thousands of people became attracted to the $10 a month big box concept. Orange Theory, the first to really dive into the heart rate monitored training with the competitiveness on the board up top, right? I mean, they all knew that one thing, and they absolutely exploded before it. It doesn't mean that you don't do great at all the other things, right? These are still fantastic models. They look great. They're professional and everything else around them, but they know they're a one thing. If Jimmy John's just came out and said, our sandwich is better than Subway sandwich, nobody really cares. But they said, we are freaky fast. And that's what got them to grow to where they are today.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can get a Jimmy John's delivered to your door, depending on where you live, almost as fast as and as much time as it takes you to get through the line and order a Subway sandwich. Not even get it in your hands, right? Yeah, but their differentiation, right? Like Subway's going to let you personalize the crap out of your sandwich, which is cool, and that's a different niche. And I don't think that they necessarily market super well in that way to make themselves stand out. Everybody just kind of knows who they are. So. But yeah, I agree with you. And Jimmy John's is good. It's consistent and fast. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So if you're that franchisor, whatever space you're in, think about, understand what your competition is doing, and then work around the idea of what's your one thing, right? And eventually it will come out. And then when you focus and you make that part of your team and part of your culture, that becomes more and more and more compound and better and better and better compared to your competition. Before you know it, people know you for that thing.
Right. And so let's take a step aside from the marketing thing. Let's also, so how do you determine what is maybe your one thing or something that you're incredibly different at? And let's talk about benchmarking, because we chatted about this before just a little bit, but this is a critical process that any franchise brand has got to go through, and then go through again and again and again. You got to know how you stand in the marketplace. But do you want to share a little bit about that, Ryan? You had some great insights when we were just chatting about it beforehand.
Yeah, a lot of that, for me anyway, in my experience, has been I understood the market I was going into and the thing that was missing, right? I mean, business is just solving problems. And so when I looked at, for instance, at Fastlane, I'll use that as an example. When I looked at what was going on in franchise sales, I said, there's some fantastic FSOs out there, but here's the problem. They're representing too many franchise brands that are not great, right? If we just take our time, we vet them out, and we have a list of criteria that is going to allow us to understand if they're great or they're not great, that's then what we're going to be known for. Right? On the Sidekick side, mission over commission, we know the things that are going to be really important. And we could represent a couple of brands that are saying things out there right now, like full semi-absentee, you never have to work, don't worry about it, we're going to take care of it for you. But we can't go do those things, right? That's not in the best interest of our clients. We have to have a set of standards to say, this is what a great franchise brand looks like for our clients that we believe in, and we're going to put our reputation behind. So, the benchmarking, I apologize. That may not have been the best answer for your franchisors, but I think the core statement behind all of it is understand your competition, understand the things that they do, and go look at the thing that is really something the customer wants that you can be the best in the world at. And then, of course, you have to measure it, right? Again, back to Jim Collins's head hog. What's your profit per X? What's the one thing that you're going to measure profit against to say, is it truly working for us? And then if it does, leverage it, keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you referenced Jim Collins. I love that book. I probably due to listen to it again. It's one of those ones I go through every couple of years just to keep it fresh. But I want to highlight one other thing in addition to what you've shared, and maybe we can wrap up on this. And I sure appreciate all your thoughts, man. If you're looking to benchmark, there are a couple of ways to go about it. There's kind of an old school way: pay someone, a chunk of change, and they'll go do it for you. Or there's some new tools out there. One of which I'll mention. A friend of mine, Patrick Pindaro, and his brother rolled out vettedbiz.com. Check it out. It's essentially a database created by all the information, all the item 19s available publicly in the industry. And now if let's say you're a painting franchise, going back to that example, you can look at the item 19s for all the painting franchises and compare them and say, oh, wow, look at this. Our customer acquisition cost is lower than everybody else's. That's usually not on an item 19. I wish it were, but let me give you a better example. Our average unit value, our average unit revenue is higher than everybody else's, or our profit, our gross margin is higher than everybody else's. Or you start to look at these things and compare, and then realize, okay, here's our superpower. And if you don't have, and then you tie that in for the savvy business owner, as well as something else that you're doing uniquely that makes you stand out. And now you've got a unique selling proposition, and now you can attract, and you can also communicate what makes you unique against the other sea of people that are out there doing something similar to what you're doing.
I'll use an example. So I remember back when we were talking to Michael Morehouse at Mosquito Shield. He calls us up and he says, hey, I'm interested in working with you guys. And at first we're like, mosquitoes, okay, it's been done by quite a few before. Why would we think this is the next big thing? And at first we were a little like, no thanks. But we got to talking to him, and we realized, great founders, leadership, franchisees were happy, things like that. But then he said something to us that was unique. We went in and we looked at their territory size, their franchise fee, and their royalty. And right, this isn't necessarily, and they also talked about their organic compounds that they use and how it's healthier for the pets in the home and things like that, which was great. But what really set it up for us is we built this chart and we said, look at their territory size compared to the competition. Then look at the price to get in compared to the competition. Then look at the ongoing royalty that they charge compared to the competition for the services that they get. So their one thing happened to be, we are going to give you a bigger or a better or bigger business opportunity for less, right? Sometimes when you're in a really crowded space, you may not be able to say, I can paint the house better, or I can put up the Christmas lights better. You may have to go back and upstream again and look at the actual business, the numbers of the business opportunity. But I don't care what business you're in, there is something that you can find to be your one thing. You just really need to spend the time and attention into it, understand your competition, like you said, and figure out where you can differentiate.
Yeah, because Mosquito Shield's got a good thing going, right? The organic compounds, friendly for the environment. Hopefully those things don't kill bees, because we got a shortage of bees right now. But you get the idea. Like that differentiator, the thing that they want to trumpet from the rooftops, is actually not what's attracting the buyers, right? The right buyers to make the business thrive. So be cautious, right? A lot of people they bet the house and the farm on this competitive advantage that actually is almost irrelevant to the buyers. So make sure you're paying attention to those things, because as you highlighted, the actual territory size, investment level, and the opportunity for revenue, their ongoing commission structure, actually being profitable, those things mattered a lot more than maybe this flashy thing that they thought was most important.
100%. And if you want to leverage people like us at Sidekick to go help you develop it, you need to clearly articulate those things to us, so we then can articulate it to our clients, right? We need to believe in your brand. We need to have a tremendous amount of confidence to recommend you over everybody else in our inventory. So once we take somebody through a process and they're saying, what's important to me is I want repeat business, I want seasonal, and then we can say, well, Mosquito Shield fits that. And by the way, you get this bigger business opportunity. We really dive deep into those things at Sidekick, because we believe the inside information is one of the differentiators to be able to choose the right franchise brand. So the franchisors, if they can't articulate it themselves, they can't ever expect us to be able to articulate it to a client.
Yeah. And let's take a step back. So even if they're not working with a Sidekick, your broker community,
Yep.
how are you, if you can't articulate that simply and boil it down that way, how are you going to, even on like Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever channel you're using to generate leads, like how on earth are you going to differentiate yourself in the sea of opportunities, unless you've got a very clearly defined point of differentiation? You know, the one thing you're better than everybody else at, to go back to Jim Collins in the world. It's what we did years ago when I came here. I said, no, this is what we're better than everybody else at. And that's all we focused on. It's franchising.
100%.
So yeah, it works. I'll just tell you that it just works.
Yeah, we like to say that we are the movie trailer, they are the movie. And what that means is we only have a couple of minutes to get somebody excited about a franchise brand. So we can't dive deep into every detail of your technology and your call center and your training process. And that's not even our job. Our job is to know the highlights, that movie trailer. You know, in 3 to 5 minutes, can we get somebody super excited about the next step of understanding your brand? And that's when you kick in and you tell them the main characters and the plot and the ending and all that. But give me enough information to make that movie trailer exciting.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Well, Ryan, you've been fantastic. I just want to let you know I appreciate you making the time in a busy schedule as you're growing Sidekick and coaching baseball and all these other things you're doing, to jump in here and record this with us. So, any parting thoughts for anybody listening that just needs to zero in on anything else for a candidate journey to be successful?
Always put yourself in the shoes of the person that's buying. Recognize where you stand in the franchise world, what makes you different, and the huge commitment that person is making to your brand. And don't underestimate the emotions that go into it. Make sure you manage it well. And Dave, I just want to say thanks back to you too. I mean, what you guys are doing over at Client Tether, right? You're building technology, you're helping franchisors leverage technology to do these things. And so more people need to, understand what it is that you do. More people need to do what you do and help franchisors not make these mistakes. Not only are you building technology to help them not make mistakes, but you're putting out content to help them not make mistakes, which ultimately downstream helps people be better and more successful franchisees. So thanks for what you do.
Well, I appreciate that comment, and likewise, I think there are quite a few people trying to do their best to get good data out. So I'm happy to be one of them. But Ryan, thanks again, and good luck with any tournaments you got going on this next weekend, man.
Lots of them coming. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Yep. See ya.